Hello and welcome everyone on our webinar. I'm really happy to see that so many of you joined already. Today we will talk you through about auto-translation rules with Angelika. Before jumping into the real deal, let me just quickly do some housekeeping. The webinar will be recorded and we will send the recording to you after this session. It will be around 45 minutes of presentation, and then we will have time to answer all your questions. Please make sure you leave your questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom panel. You can find this Q&A bubble on the Zoom panel. And our presenter today will be Angelika Zerfass, who is a memoQ expert and trainer and knows everything about memoQ. So Angelika, please let me handle the mic to you.
Thank you very much. So let me share my screen. Can get started with the presentation. I do have a few slides just to get into the thing, and then I'll go live into memoQ and we'll talk about what you can do with the auto-translation rules. Auto-translation rules are something where you can use regular expressions to recognize some elements in the source text and then show in the results list how they should be adapted or changed for the target language. You actually might have worked with auto-translation rules already because memoQ comes with the so-called numbers groups, and they are already in the auto-translation rules set, which means when you have to convert number formats, like decimal numbers with a dot into decimal numbers with a comma, or larger numbers where the dot and the comma need to change as well, then you would have these numbers groups and you could just activate them in the list of the auto-translation rules. You would always choose the one that has the rules that apply most closely to your target language. There isn't a group for every target language that exists because a lot of languages share the same rules. So whenever you translate into a language that, for example, uses the same as German, meaning a comma for the decimal numbers, for example, then you can use the German group, and that will then take care of the number format conversion. Now, just so that you know what's behind that, I have taken a look inside the auto-translation rules when it comes to the numbers group for English conversions. And it does look quite complicated. So we can be very happy that we don't have to set these up ourselves. Just as an example, I'm taking one of these rules to show you what's actually inside and so how complex things can be with the auto-translation rules. This is the rule for converting decimal numbers that have a comma, like from English, into or from German or any other European language other than English, and going into English where you would use a dot for the decimal number. So this is the regular expression. It looks horrifying, I know. So I've color-coded it a little bit for you. And let's go through that just so that you know what it does. Actually, the green part is matching everything that comes before the number. So things that are not number, that don't have to change in any way. Then we have the actual numbers or digits before and after the delimiter. These would be the yellow part, that's before the delimiter, and the pink part is after the delimiter. These are the parts that we want to reuse when we do the number format change, because the numbers themselves don't change, just the format. Then we have the matching for the delimiters in between, which will change. And then we have everything that comes after the number. That's the blue part, which doesn't belong to the number, so is outside of what we do with the regular expressions. Basically, what we need to do is we need to take the digits before the delimiter and the digits after the delimiter and put in the right delimiter in between. So our replacement for this regular expression would be take the digits from group number 2, that's the yellow one, put a dot in between, and then take the digits from group number 3, that's the pink one. The gray one in between is also in round brackets, but it doesn't count as a group because it has this question mark in front of it, which means don't remember this. This is not a group that we want to reuse. So we can be very happy that memoQ already did all that work. Now, what can we do with auto-translatables? Well, depends on the documents that you have, but there might be elements that you want to change. For example, if you have digits followed by a symbol, like here a percentage symbol, and you want to change the sequence and maybe insert a space. Or if you have date formats and you want to change them into another kind of date format with dots, with dashes, again, rearranging the numbers maybe. Or there might be areas where you have an expression where a part of it needs to change. Like here, I have the name of a document that has a language identifier inside, and only this language identifier needs to change. Everything else stays the same. And then there's one more thing that the auto-translation rules can do. That's conversions. So you could specify that if there is a number and the cm for centimeters after it, you can put in the calculation how to make inches out of that. So we'll go through all of these. And basically, when you have set up your auto-translatables, then they will come up with that green background in the memoQ editor. And in the translation results list, you will see the matched part and also how it changes or how it should change according to your auto-translation rules. Now let's go first in these adaptations. What we here always need is our regular expression that contains some groups that we want to reuse, maybe rearranging the sequence. So the group always has these round brackets. And to use what we find in this group, later on to do the replacement, we need to have the dollar symbol and the number of the group. So if there are several groups in your regular expression, they're numbered 1, 2, 3 from the beginning, and you will call them with the dollar symbol and that respective number. Example, the number 25 followed by a percentage symbol. The number would be \d plus. \d stands for 1 digit. The plus means there can be more than 1 digit. We put that into the round brackets because that's our group that we want to reuse, want to keep the number, remember the number, and then the percentage symbol. To replace this later on in our translation with first the percentage symbol, then a space, then whatever the number was, we use the percentage symbol, space, and $1. So inside of our translation rules or auto translation rules set, we would put these two in the matching side and in the replacement side. Now let's take a look at that for real. I have a document here, and there are some things that I would like to change, basically what I had in my slides. So we have the percentage symbol, we have some date formats, we have the name of the document, and later on we also have, which probably a lot of you might know, that the source documents can be quite inconsistent when it comes to how measurement units are written. And here we can see there's one that has one space in between, another one doesn't have any space. Then there is something with 2 spaces, and here is one with a non-breaking space. So what we want to do is we want to recognize all of these, but make them more consistent in the target language, for example, always using a non-breaking space between the number and the measurement. How do we do that? We'll go to our settings, and there to the auto-translation rules. I've already set them up. Let's take a look inside. And I know this is pretty small, so I'm trying to use the zooming option here in window. I hope it works. Yes, you see a small extra window where we can now see in larger print how the regular expression looks like. That's the one I was using in my slides already. So the \d plus for any amount of digits, the percentage symbol, and changing that to percentage space, and then the digits. The other one is for the date format. So we have date formats that consist of digits / digits / digits. Digits are always \d plus. Of course, there are different ways how you can write that. You can use a range, square brackets 0 to 9. You can use, instead of the plus, you could say there could be 2 digits in this place and 4 digits in that place. So there are different ways of doing it with regular expressions. I'm just using something that's easy to read. So we have these 3 groups of, and in American dates, we have the month first, then the day, then the year, which means we need to rearrange our groups a little bit. So on the right-hand side, you can see that I'm first calling the second group, which is the day of my American date. Then I'm calling the first group, the $1, and then I'm calling the third group, the $3, that's the year. In between, I'm putting the dots. Now, please be aware, if you're a beginner with regular expressions, on the left-hand side, we need to have the regular expression itself. On the right-hand side, we write things as we want to see them. So if you want to see a dot, type a dot. Don't use the backslash dot, which you would use on the left-hand side if you match a dot in a text. On the right-hand side, we write things as they should appear in the replacement. Then we have the next one, where we say we have these digits, then an underscore, then any letters, capital letters between A and Z. This doesn't contain accented characters, by the way. For that, there is a different expression. So we have digits, underscore, capital letters, underscore, and all that we keep, we put that into our brackets. And after that, we have the EN as the language identifier of that file name. So everything that doesn't change, we keep. That's the $1. That's what is within our brackets. And then we just change what comes after it into DE in my case. So the EN just disappears and the DE takes its place. The last one with the measurement units. Again, we're looking for digits, \D+. We want to keep those, remember those. That's why we use the round brackets. Then we have a \S and an asterisk. Asterisk means there can be 1 space, several spaces, or no space. So the plus means 1 or more. The asterisk means 0, 1 or more. Remember, in my example, there was a number which was directly followed by the millimeters, so no space in between. And the asterisk basically tells it there could be a space, but there doesn't have to be one. On the right-hand side, I call up the number that I find. I have put in a non-breaking space and the millimeters. Unfortunately, we cannot see that it is a non-breaking space here, but believe me, it is. We will see that when we try it out on the document. The thing is, if you want to add a non-breaking space to that right-hand side, to that replacement side, please copy it from the memoQ editor. So in the memoQ editor, create a non-breaking space, copy that and put it in here. It does not work if you try to input a non-breaking space through the keyboard or copying it from Word. That does not work. So you have to use it from within memoQ. One more thing that I would like to mention. With every place where we can use regular expressions in memoQ, there is this small, let me just take this away. There's this small RX button, which means behind that is the Regex assistant, which can be quite useful because when we call that up, now it shows my regular expression that I had in my list that I had selected, and also the replacement. And now I can add this to my Regex library. Actually, there already is a list of things that you can use and don't have to create yourself. If you move further down, here are the built-in regular expressions for things that you might want to do. As you can see, there comes a pop-up with the expression itself, also with a description. But if you create your own, you can always save them to this list. They would then here be the first ones that you have. A nice thing is that you can label them so that you can find them more easily or define where they should be used. And if you move your mouse pointer over it, you will see this pop-up here. It says label HTML and a description for marking up HTML codes as inline tags. So wherever you want to do that, you can just reuse your regular expression as you like. And one more thing for those of you who are really into regular expressions, let me just open one of the other ones. This is a regular expression that I use when I do alignments to find segments that consist of several sentences, just to make sure that I don't need to separate them. In order so that I know what I'm doing, I have added a comment to my regular expression so that I can know what the expression is actually doing. Especially for the more complex ones, this makes sense. So you use round brackets, a question mark, and a hash symbol at the beginning, which means this is just a comment. It's nothing that the regular expression will match or search for. It's just a comment so that you know what the regular expression is doing. So it's quite powerful, this Regex assistant, to save your own Regex expressions, to name them, to label them, to describe what they're doing, and also to have comments inside, just like commenting code if you're developing software, for example. That's just on the side, because I think it's so hidden that some people don't realize that they can do these things. Now, let's use that in our document and see what happens. So here comes the 25% changed into percentage 25. Here I have the change of the date formats. There's the change for the name of the document. And there are the changes for all the measurements. You can see there's always a non-breaking space between the digit and the millimeters. So that was one part, which is probably the most used part in the auto-translation rules. Let's go to the second one, which is custom lists. Because sometimes it's not a one-on-one or one-to-one change that you need to do, but there are several elements in the source text that might have to change all into the same thing in the target. My example here is that there are digits with underscores and language identifiers, and they all need to change. The delimiter needs to change from underscore to slash, and all the different identifiers need to change into just one. So that's when we use the so-called custom lists, which means the custom list is an extra tab in the auto-translation rules where you would create a list. First of all, the name of a list. All list names have these hash symbols beside them. In between, you're free how you want to name them. And then you can create a list of the elements that should be recognized in the source text. So instead of having all these elements in my regular expression to search for, I'm just searching for the content of this list. So I'm finding, in this case, I'm searching for everything that has digits and an underscore, and afterwards, one of the elements of that list. Both of them are groups. And what I do, I take the group that I find that digits and the underscore, that's the one I keep. And afterwards, I just type then the slash and the DE. That's the only thing that everything I find is going to change into. So let's take a look at an example in memoQ. So maybe my client tells me, well, we have all these products. They have version numbers. And these version numbers, they're written digit dot digit. But my client doesn't like that. For their translation, they would like to change all that into digit slash digit for whatever reason. Now, of course, I could now go and change everything that has a digit dot digit into digit slash digit, but that would also change these regular decimal numbers, which I don't want. So what do? I'm creating a list of these names, and my regular expression then says, if you find anything of that list, followed by such a version number, keep the name, keep the numbers, but change the delimiter in between. Let's take a look. So that's my custom list number 2. First of all, let me just enlarge that again a little bit. It's a really nice feature in Windows. When you press the Windows and the plus button, you get this small zooming device. So first of all, I'm going to create a list name with the hash symbols again around it. and then the actual list of the different names. Then I'm going back to the auto-translation rules, and I'm going to use the list name and say, if anything from that list comes up, followed by possibly a space, \s for a space, the asterisk for 0, 1 or more spaces, followed by a digit, \d, a dot, \dot, a digit, \d. As I want to keep the digits, these are the ones that I put into round brackets. On the right-hand side, I then do the replacement. I say $1. So keep the name from the product list that you found, put in a space, take the number of the second group, that first digit of the version number, then add a slash, add the second digit of the version number. So that's all I need to do to now recognize all the names in that document with the version number behind it. Let's do that. And as you can see here now, we recognize these names and the version number changes into something else, but the other decimal numbers, they don't change. So no problem there. So you can come up with all kinds of ideas when you want to use these lists of one thing changing, one thing staying the same. The next thing I would like to talk about is, again, another kind of list, but it's called a translation list. So what if each of the elements needs to change individually? Like my language IDs, they need to change, the EN needs to change to ENU, FR to FRE, ES to ESP, IT to ITA, things like that. Again, I would create that list. I would create the list name with the hash symbols around it. And now I create a list of translations, basically. So this is the source language, and in the translation, it should look like this. Actually, when I remember back, when I was talking to Gabor Ugrai, one of the founders of Kilgrey or memoQ, and he explained to me that he was actually using the auto-translation rules at that time, and that's like 15 years ago, as some sort of a machine translation system. So he put in all types of words and expressions that automatically should be changed instead, because at that time, machine translation was not that ready to be used. So he created his own sort of machine translation system out of that. So you can use it for almost anything that you can think of. So this is what we will do. We will set up a list. We will search for the things in the list in the source language and exchange it for the translations of these things for the target language. So again, we're looking for the digits, \d plus _, because that's the part that stays the same. And then we look for anything that is in the list of my language change. If we find something like that, we will change it to, we'll keep the digits, we'll keep the _, and then we use the translation part of the translation list. So in the regular expression, it looks at the source language characters or matches that we have in there. And when we use the list in the replacement action, it looks into the destination column. Let's see, let's go there. So here's my example. A little bit more complex than what I had in the slides, but my regular expression has been adapted to that. Let me go to my settings. And it's the translation list. So I called this list ID. You can call it whatever you like. As far as I know, you can't use any spaces inside of the name, but you can use underscores, for example, if it's a longer name. And here I have my source language list and the target language list. You can always add new ones here. Like, let's say I want to have DE and that one, and add that to the list. There's also a preview. So if you want to see how things work, you go to the preview, you just type in some text or whatever thing you want to change and click on preview, and it should, oops. Yeah, let's see. Okay, there seems to be some mistake here. I'm not really sure why. It should actually change. I have to check that later on, because sometimes the preview doesn't give you the same results as in the editor, but we'll see. Let's go to the auto-translation rules. Again, let me make this a little bit bigger for you so that we can zoom in on that. So what we can see is we are looking for a range of characters that's in the square brackets. So if you're not sure what sequence the things have that you're looking for, it could be a combination of first letters, then numbers, or first numbers, then letters, in between some dashes or underscores. If you don't know the actual sequence, you would just take the square brackets and put in the ranges of characters that you're looking for. So any combination of now capital letters, digits, dashes, and underscores would be matched by this expression. Don't forget the plus symbol, because this range just means find one character of any of these. If you put the plus at the back of these square brackets, that means it can be a combination of more than just one of these characters. All of that is the group that we want to keep. And after that, we have anything from the ID list, from the ID translation list. We want to replace that. We want to keep the part that doesn't change. So that's the $1. And the $2 would be the translation part of our list. Now let's take a look. And there we go. Here we can see that the expression works fine. So the preview does seem to have an issue. I'll have to check that later on. But usually the preview helps you to find out whether your regular expression works or not. So as you can see, there are quite a lot of things that you can do with these custom lists, translation lists, and adaptations. Now, the next thing would be conversions. Let me go back. So conversions mean that you have a value that needs some kind of mathematical operation. So you might want to calculate miles into kilometers, or degree centigrade into degree Fahrenheit, inches into centimeters, things like that. For that, memoQ has in the auto-translation rules a separate tab where you can then add the information how the calculation needs to go. It's not very complex, so it's just very simple things, but it can be useful for quite a lot of instances. So for example, if in my source I find digits that are followed by the characters IN, I want to have them the same digits. That's memoQ does that on its own, so we don't have to do a regular expression for that. But in the translation, it should use the digits with the cm for centimeters. And to get from inches to centimeters, we have to multiply by 2.54. So that's the scale, really. The offset would be if you need to add or subtract something from the value to get the actual value, like when you go from centigrade to Fahrenheit, you say times 1.81 plus 32. So the plus 32 would be in the offset. I don't know why they call it offset. It's probably a developer thing. Could have been named a little bit more user-friendly, but okay. What else you can do? You can actually collect a lot of things. And here I have one. Whenever in my English text the word inches comes up, a number and then inches, and I'm translating into Japanese, I have these Japanese characters for a centimeter and also the calculation to go from inches to centimeters. So you're not limited to just the letters. You can also do characters for Chinese or Japanese if needed. Another thing we need to mention is that memoQ does not round the values. So you will see that in just a moment when I show you how it works in the documents. Let's go back to the documents. So here's a simple example from 23 inches, I want to go into centimeters. From miles, I want to go into kilometers, and from Fahrenheit into centigrade. Let's go to our auto-translation rules and get the conversions. There we go. So no rules needed, no regular expressions, just the conversion list. Of course, you can combine them all in one. And now here I also have the miles per hour into kilometers per hour. And yeah, most of the things that we need right now. Another thing, let me just check. Yes, for this one, for the conversion of Fahrenheit into centigrade, I also told memoQ that I want to have the symbol, the centigrade symbol, in front of the value. Because usually it would take it as it is in the text, but I want to move it to the front of the value. So you can do that as too. Let's go back. And let's see. So inches and miles, nicely converted. Unfortunately, if we take a look at the centigrade, instead of having that nice rounded value of 20 degrees centigrade, we get this 19.99999 something. Yeah, it's something that memoQ can't do. There's no setting for it. So you'll have to live with these values. Unfortunately, if you use the auto-translation rules later on together with the QA checker, this will give you, if the person who translates puts that in and says, well, actually, it should be 20, they will get an error message or a warning message that the auto-translation rule has not been applied correctly because the auto-translation says it should be 19.999 something. I guess that's just something we'll have to live with. So now that we've set up all these nice auto-translation rules, let's take a look where you actually use them. Well, we've seen that so far in the editor, but there are more ways of using it. So of course, whenever you have the auto-translation rules set up, they will show up in green in the source language. They will show up in the translation results list, also in green, where you can use a double click or control and the number to get it into your document. Another way to get these auto-translatables into your translation would be to just, on the segment where you are, press the control key on your keyboard. That gives the segment this bluish, purplish outline, and it gives you a drop-down list of all the values, of all the elements from that sentence that you can basically copy into the translation. So it would be the auto-translatables, it would be other numbers, it would be non-translatables, web addresses, email addresses, so terms from the term base. So quite a lot of things can show up in this basically predictive typing. Another thing you can do is you can use the auto-translatables for QA checking, just to make sure that what you've set up in the auto-translation rules really has been done during translation. So if you check that box to check the auto-translatables, memoQ will give you a warning whenever something has not been adapted in the way the auto-translation rules define it. And then one last thing, which I also find quite useful, is you might know that there is a pre-translation feature that's called populate number-only segments. And as you can see from the name, this was created at a time when developers were thinking about segments that only contain numbers. And you might want to just copy them over, or if they're decimal numbers, you want to automatically change them with the right delimiter, so the right number format. Nowadays, that feature can do a lot more because, as you can see here, it not only recognizes numbers, non-translatables, email addresses, website addresses, but also you can add the auto-translatables that you've set up. So if there are segments that only consist of such an auto-translatable element, then actually they can be auto-translated with that populate number only segments feature. Let me show that to you. So here we have a list. Let me make that bigger. Actually, I don't know if you know that, if you use Control and Plus in the preview, you can make the window show bigger script, which is quite nice sometimes. Here we have a lot of segments that only consist of these auto-translatables. And if I move down here, there are even some email and web addresses. There are the product names actually that I've been using before. Now, for the product names to be recognized and be for memoQ to be able to copy them automatically over into the translation, these product names would need to be in a non-translatables list. So they're not taken from the auto-translation rules, but from the non-translatables lists. And that you would find in Project Home, in the settings, up here, and you would create a small list that then contains company names, product names, names of people, names of places, names of conferences, of books, of magazines, whatever you have in your documents, things that don't change or should not change from source language to target language. And if you have that, and if it's activated, you can use it in that pre-translation feature. To use that, we'll go to the preparation menu, populate number only segments, and there make sure that the auto-translatables box is checked. You could also even lock the rows that you're doing, that you're pre-translating with that feature if you like. So let's do that. And now we can see that, first of all, they have been converted with the conversions here as well. Email addresses, web addresses have been copied over, have been locked, and the product names as well. So the auto-translatables can be quite useful in a lot of different places. Now, this is basically it from me at the moment. Let's see what kind of questions we have so that we can go into that. Let's see. Is it possible to add a rule that translator can follow to keep the source text and add the translation in brackets? Let me think. There is a pre-translation where you could, let me check. In the translation settings for automatic lookup and insertion, I think there is something where it says copy source to target if no match is found. So, it doesn't always do it that way. Okay, if it helps you, you can switch that on. So if there's no match found from the translation memory, then automatically the source text would be copied. Other than that, in preparation, you might want to, let's say, all these three segments need to be copied over and the translation needs to be in brackets afterwards. I would then say, I do a preparation of these 3 or 50 or 100 segments and say copy source to target where empty for this selection, and then add my translation afterwards. So these are the only two ways I know of where you can actually copy things over. With the auto-translation rules, yes, of course, you could say that whatever text is in the segment should be copied to the target, but it would not be automatic in a sense that it would show up in green here, and people would need to double-click to get it in. Or you use this populate number only segments to have them all in. but then you can also use copy source to target. So maybe that feature, maybe I'm not understanding what you actually want to do, but I think there are other features that might help you more. Now let's see, what else do we have? When the number or date format is different in the target, always get a warning concerning an inconsistent format or source number missing in the target or number added in target. How can I avoid these warnings without stopping relevant warnings? Yeah, that's the thing. If numbers change, and this system is not intelligent, it just compares if the number is in the source but it's not there in the target, or it's different, or you changed the number of the month into the name of the month, then the number is missing. And that has nothing to do with auto-translation rules, but that has to do with the QA checker. So if the QA checker does, let's see, if it does number formats or number values, so then you will always get these messages. So you might want to run two different QA checks, one for the actual numbers so that you make sure that they're okay, and the other one without the number checking set. And maybe everything that has been checked, set it to locked so that it's not checked the second time around. But yes, and I know what you mean, but memoQ and all the other tools as well, they're not intelligent. They don't understand when something is a date and when it's not a date. Okay, another question. Is there a way to auto-translate images? Automatically replacing source language images with target language images? No, not really. There is an image translation process or an image transcription process where you can basically gather all the images out of a translation project, transcribe the text that's on there, send it off to somebody who does the translation and or get it translated, and then send it to a designer who uses the translation to recreate these images with the translation. And that package that you get back that contains the translated images, that can then update the images in your project. So there is a process to do that, but it's not an easy way of just pointing memoQ to a folder and telling it, okay, take these images. So that's not it. But there is a way of collecting these images and transcribing them and importing the recreated images. So let's see what else. I'd like a rule that keeps memoQ from inserting a different web address when machine translating. Currently, previously used web addresses are inserted, causing problems. Okay. In that case, if you want to keep the web addresses as they are, I would probably go with a regex tagger and change the web addresses to tags before you actually send it to machine translation. You can do that by adding a tagger to the import filter or by opening the document like so. Let's go to a web address. So you could create a regex tagger and say everything that has www and then any kind of dot plus until it comes to the end of .com. Just very simple. Everything that starts with 3 W's and ends with .com will become a tag. Of course, there are different ways of doing these things. You could also include the HTTP in front of that and make a tag out of it. So let me just show the tags in a more easy manner. So medium, so you can see. And if you send it then to machine translation, I think it should keep what's in the tag. So it shouldn't change the content. But that's the only way I can think of to force a machine translation system not to actually do something with that web address. All right, let's see what else. Explain what the source order and destination order are in the conversions tab. So let's go. Ooh. Conversions. So you mean like source and destination? So in the source, there would be a number followed by IN. In the destination, there would be the same number then followed by cm for centimeters instead of inches. Is that what you mean? So you're basically just telling memoQ what comes after numbers and how does it need to change into the translation. The numbers is something that memoQ will recognize automatically. Whenever it finds a number that's followed by IN, it will assume that this is something to calculate and come up with the same number and the calculated number and then the CM instead of the IN. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, why is the degree Celsius written before the amount? Because I said so. I just wanted to show you that in these rules, you can move things around. So instead of having the Fahrenheit at the end and the centigrade at the end, you can also say in the translation, that symbol moves to the beginning, so in front of the number. Usually that's not checked. I just checked it to show you that it's possible. Okay. Does this preparation tab work with the web version as well? Good question. I don't know whether the populating of the number only segments is available on the web. I don't think so. I have to check that. I'll make a note of that. Not yet, anyway, because that is something that more and more of the features of memoQ are moving on the web, but not everything is there yet. Are translation pairs always case sensitive, or can they be set to match the case of the source? They're case sensitive. So whatever you put in here, let's take a look. Where's my translation list? And I have an example here. So for example, if I'm translating from English to Chinese, if it's written in small letters or in capital letters, it always should take the same Chinese character. So it is case sensitive. And regular expressions is not something where you can really do programming or changing things like capitalization around. So unfortunately, you'll have to put in everything as it should appear later on with the different cases so that memoQ can use them. Let's say, is there a way to perform populate number only segments in a template workflow? So when you import the file, the template does this population directly. I don't think so. Let's check what the template automation gives you. Because I don't think that feature is there. So with the I symbol, I've opened everything up so that I can see, oh, yes, it is. Here I can see it. Populate number only segment. So if you don't see it in the list, you might just have to click on the I to see that everything that's available is there. On the other hand, I have to tell you that I'm using a project manager license. So some of these things are not there in the translator license. But yes, it should be there if you use, for example, online projects. Let's see what kind of settings. Yeah, it's the same settings that we've seen in the editor. So you can then say that you want to, let's see. Oh yeah, auto-translatables, there we are. So you can do the same settings as in the editor. Oh, there's a fan of mine. Thank you very much. Will the webinar be saved? Yes, of course, the webinar has been recorded, so you will be able to see it. You will get a link to where you can find it. What regex engine is used by memoQ? Good question. I'll have to find out. I'm pretty sure they're using the regex that .NET is using, but I'll make sure that I find that out and will send out an email to everybody so that all of you can know. Okay, can translators add the non-translatables list while working? Yes, of course they can. Whenever you are in a project, you can go to the settings, you can go to the non-translatables lists. You will have your own local lists here, and you can always add them to a project just by activating the checkbox, no problem. So let's see. What about the regex modifiers? Global search, case sensitive. I'll have to try out what memoQ will take of these. If you can give me a specific example of what you want to achieve, we can see whether it works. Some of the things I found are not possible with regex in memoQ. For example, I cannot look for tags within the auto-translation rules because memoQ will then say, if I use the \m tag or I tag, it will tell me that it's an incorrect regular expression. So I would need to know a little bit more what you actually want to do. But if you can just send us an email and ask what you want to do, we can find out. Okay, the columns on the right with the checkboxes. I think that belongs to one of the questions before with the source and the destination. Let me check again. Conversions. Oh, okay. I think these belong to these ones here. So if I go here, I have a checkbox destination unit before value. So I've changed the destination order. If I uncheck that, it should actually, interesting. Okay, another thing that I would need to find out. Oh, okay, let me just change it. Sometimes you have to click the change button so for things to change. So yes, so if you change the sequence of how the value and the measurement unit, how they appear, then it would be marked here in these lists. So if the destination unit should be before the value, so the degree centigrade should come up before the actual value, and you change this setting, then it appears here. So you can do that for source and target. Okay. Let's see what else. Auto-translation rules tab. Trying to get my regex to work when I have more than one number in a length, for example, 12 millimeters. Okay. Regex tab again. Let me see. I think that was maybe this one. If you want to have more than one number, you would use the \, the D, and directly after that, the plus. That means at least one digit, but it can be 2 or 3 or 4 or 20 in a row. Doesn't matter. The plus always means there is at least one, but there can be more of the same, of the digit. If you want to be very precise, for example, if you say, I always want to see match something that has 2 to 4 digits, you would say \D, then use the curly brackets and say there have to be at least 2, comma, but at most 4. So now anything that has at least 2 digits or 3 or 4 would be matched. If you don't care or if you don't know, then \D plus or square brackets 0 to 9 and the plus. The only difference between the \D plus and the 0 to 9 plus is that the 0 to 9 only matches single byte characters, whereas if you have like Chinese or Japanese text, you might have digits that are written in double byte characters, and that only the \D would catch. So hoping that helps you with your question. Another one for conversions. Can I ask memoQ to always add an unbreaking space between the converted value and the destination symbol? If so, how? I haven't really tried that out. Let's see. If in my conversions, I say, if I go from Fahrenheit, let's add a space here. Well, actually, you say a non-breaking space. Yes, let's copy a non-breaking space. Creating a non-breaking space. Copy that. So that's Control Shift and the space bar. So copy that. Put that in the conversion. Say in front of that C, I now have a space. Don't forget to press the change button. Okay, now let's see if that works. Where's my conversion? There. Yes. So now it's adding, take that off. Now it's adding the degree symbol and a non-breaking space. Because if I'm switching off the non-breaking spaces, like with the edit, you can see there is a space, then the degree symbol, and then, so yes, if you copy the non-breaking space from within memoQ and add it to the conversion tab in front of the symbol that you want to see, then it will be added also when you take things over from the results list. Is it possible to use word wildcards in memoQ instead of regular expression? Not that I know of. No, I don't think so. I'll have to check with the developer if there's any way of doing that, but I don't think so. So word wildcards. I know if you're used to Word and you know how to do things there, then it's really hard to use another system if you move into another tool. Now, another question. Do you need a regex to lock all segments with numbers only, or should memoQ lock all segments with numbers and text? Or wouldn't memoQ lock all? Let's see. If the segments only have numbers, let's go inside here. I'm going to unlock my segments and do a little bit of changing here. Just deleting some of the extra things here. Okay, let's take this off. Clear my translations. So if you use the populate number only segments with that locking rows, then it should lock all the segments that have numbers only. What I would do probably is I would use regular expressions to first get the list of all the segments that only consist of a number. So if you switch on regular expressions for filtering, and in the source text, you would type that small circumflex and then say \d plus, and then the dollar symbol. That basically means, let me copy that out to a text file so that you can see it more easily. So that circumflex means beginning of the line. That dollar symbol means end of the line. And \d plus means digits only. So if you find segments that only from beginning to end consist of digits, then you can use this here for filtering. And you would get only the segments that have these numbers, and then you can lock them just in one go. Just Control Shift and A, Control L for locking, and press Enter. So that's what I would probably do. And it looks like we're at the end of our question list, and we are, oh, just one more. Can regex flags? Okay, I'll have to get back to you on that. With the regex flags, such as G and I, I'll really have to check. I don't know. it seems we're at the end of the list. We're at the end of our time. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It was a real pleasure to have all these nice questions coming up. And yeah, I really do hope that some of the information was helpful to you and that you will be using auto-translation rules a bit more than before. Thank you very much. And well, maybe see you at one of the next webinars. If there are any questions that we haven't answered yet, we will go through the list of questions again and send out an email with everything that's still missing. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.